it's Hailey, and today I'm going to be sharing my top tips to read more. So today's video is sponsored by Basmo, which is this amazing reading app that I'm going to talk about a little bit later because it has totally transformed my reading for the better. But I've done a couple of videos about how you can read more in the past, and I love doing them, and I actually have a lot of new tips to share with you guys today. So first off, I wanted to say, whether you read 2 books a year or you read 200 books a year, it is up to you. There's nothing wrong with either number. You can be a slow reader, and that's totally fine. But today I am going to be sharing with you some tips for how to maximize your reading time. So what I love about the tips in today's video is that they aren't going to entirely disrupt your life. It's not like you're going to feel like you have to spend every second of your life reading. It's just about using the time that you do have more meaningfully and those little things that will make a huge difference. So I hope that makes sense. These are definitely things that I have implemented in my life because I love to read and I'm always trying to read more. For me, it's not about a competition. It's more so a competition with myself. I know that it can get kind of intimidating to see all these people out there who can easily read 250 books or whatever without even thinking, it seems. But if you're a slow reader, which I would say I'm like a medium-paced reader depending on the book, it's totally fine. Like, don't feel bad about how much you are reading is basically what I wanted to say. I just love to try and read more because there are so many books out there that I want to get to, so I want to try and get to as many as possible. So before we get into the tips, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I post new videos 2 to 3 times a week, and you can also click that notification bell so you will be notified whenever a new video goes up. Without further ado, let's get into my list of tips to maximize your reading. So I feel like I need to talk about Basmo first because it has made a huge difference, and a lot of the other tips that I have will stem from that. Like, a lot of these kind of go hand in hand, and it all combines to be one giant tip that will make a huge difference. And you can pick and choose what works for you, what works for your lifestyle, definitely, but I think there's a little something here for everyone. So getting to my first tip, I think that implementing the use of a reading tracker makes a huge difference. And the app Basmo is pretty much everything that I want from a reading tracker. Within the app, you can organize your bookshelves, want to read, what you've read this year, what you're currently reading, all of those things. So it offers shelf organization, but what it does that other similar apps don't do is really break down your reading into sessions. So you can set a daily or a yearly goal. And for me, I think that setting goals is so helpful for making a difference with how much I read, because I'm a very goal-oriented person. So if I have a goal, I really will want to take the steps to achieve it. And having a yearly goal as a little challenge for myself, I love having that because I try and read 100 books every year, and I love having it broken down into a daily goal as well. So then it's not so intimidating. So I can adjust that based on my lifestyle, based on how busy I am, but I'll generally try and read like for 1 hour or 2 hours a day. It kind of depends on how much free time you have, but having that goal in mind is very helpful for me personally. Now, Basmo allows you to start a reading session. So when you pick up your book in the morning or whenever you're going to be reading, you can start a session in the app, and while you're in that session, it will track how long you've been reading for, and you can also take little notes and everything, which is so helpful to have everything in one place and to jot down thoughts while reading, because I find something that might slow me down sometimes is opening something separate or trying to write down within the margins or things like that. But I love having my phone tracking how much I'm reading, but also being available to take some notes on what I am reading. When you finish that session, you can also track your emotions, how you felt while reading that particular part of the book, how many pages you read, all of those things, which is super handy. Even if you don't think that goal setting will help you and will just intimidate you, you still are very much encouraged within the app to read more meaningfully and thoughtfully, and I think that that is so beneficial. It keeps my mind from wandering while I'm reading because I know I'm in that session, and it just keeps me focused on exactly what I'm doing. So it is just the perfect reading app for me. I really love it. I love the fact that I can have meaningful reading sessions, but also organize my bookshelves all in one place. Everything about it is so helpful. So if you guys were interested in checking out Basmo, I will have a link down below for the website so you can learn more, but also for you to download the app in the App Store or the Google Play Store. I definitely recommend checking it out. I don't think you guys will be disappointed. My next tip is to be mindful about what you're picking to read. I think that it is super important to be reading what you want. Obviously, this isn't always an option if you are an English major like I was, or you're in high school or whatever. You sometimes have those assigned readings, but I think it's really important to also have something on the side that you're reading for enjoyment. Or else I find if I'm only reading something that I feel like I'm forced to read and don't want to pick up, then that will drastically slow down my reading because I feel like I'm trudging through it. So that being said, if a certain genre isn't for you, don't feel like you have to read it. I don't really like thrillers. I'm not a huge fan of mysteries, so I tend to avoid those. There are the occasional ones that will interest me, but I will keep to whatever I find the most enjoyable. I never let anyone force me to pick what I'm going to read. Even though I have this channel, I just kind of go with my mood because I'm definitely a mood reader and listen to that, which always keeps me from getting into a reading slump. Speaking of reading trackers and that as kind of a helpful tool, there are a lot of other helpful tools that you can use to help you read even more. And one of them is audiobooks. I love audiobooks. They are a fantastic way to be reading when I don't necessarily have the time to actually sit with a book open. So oftentimes when I am currently reading a book, I will have it both physically and on audio, so then I can switch no matter what I'm doing and get through the book a little bit faster than I would have if I were just physically reading it. Audiobooks are great for when you're commuting or when you're getting ready or cooking or whatever, just something like a task where your mind isn't really occupied and you can still pay attention to the book, but you don't have to like actually physically be reading it. Another tool that I never thought I would love and use as much as I do is my e-reader. I debated for so long about getting an e-reader, but oh my goodness, it has made the most drastic difference in the amount that I am able to read. So while I'm reading a book, I will also take the ebook out on loan from the library. If that's not available, I will purchase the ebook because whatever I'm physically reading and I own the book for, I will also have an ebook copy of. Because one thing that definitely helps me to read more is constantly having a book on me. So if you do find yourself with some free time and you feel like reading, then you are able to do that. And an e-reader has allowed me to do that so much. One of my favorite things about this is that it is actually backlit. So I have this on like the lowest brightness, and then I also have it on a dark background because I will read this at night while my boyfriend's sleeping. So sometimes my boyfriend's work schedule means that he has to go to bed at like 7 p.m. or something like that. And I will oftentimes go to bed as well, but like before I would just scroll on my phone or whatever. But now I can read while he is sleeping and it doesn't disturb him because it's not too bright at all. It's bright enough for me to read easily, doesn't hurt my eyes or anything like that, but it won't wake him up. And that is just so helpful to me. That has been the main difference, is reading right before bed. So I love reading right before bed because it relaxes me and it helps me to fall asleep. But when I was reading a physical book, it's hard to, you know, get comfortable. Like, it sounds silly, but it's hard to get comfortable and be able to like actually fall asleep while I'm reading, if that makes sense. But I constantly have my e-reader at my bedside, and whether my boyfriend's working or not, or sleeping or not, I will always read this at the very end of the night because it's such an easy way to be able to lay down and read. I don't know if that makes sense, but honestly, I highly recommend this. I used to have so many tools that I would use to like have my book propped open too for when I was trying to read while eating or whatever, but I got this little case here and the stand for it is so lovely because I can just have it in front of me and I can read so easily. Like, this just makes reading so easy. Also, because I know a lot of you are going to ask, I have the Kindle. I think it's either the second like highest or the second lowest ranking one, or it's the cheapest one. I'm not exactly sure. And then I also got this case just on Amazon. I could go on and on, honestly, about how much this has changed my reading, but I'm going to move on to more tips. My next tip is to implement reading as a part of your routine. This will make a huge difference, and it's definitely something small that will make a huge difference. Earlier this year in February, I did a video where I challenged myself to read 100 pages every single day. And one of the things that helped me to reach that goal was making it a habit to wake wake up and the first thing that I did every morning was read. I would sit down with my coffee and read. And I found that made a huge difference for me because when I got that reading done at the beginning of the day, then I felt like the rest of my day was free. Not that I had to do it, but it was just a way to make it a habit. Another habit is reading right before bed. Like I said, I will always read right before bed. That is the very last thing that I do. So I start and end my day with reading. And for me, that has been a really great way to make sure that I am making it a priority. I also will try and have distractions away from me at those designated reading times. So while I'm using the Basmo app, I'll put it on Do Not Disturb. So then I'm not tempted to look at texts or look at Instagram or anything like that. I know that this time is dedicated to reading. This is where things might differ for you. Like the morning might not work for your schedule. Nighttime might not work for your schedule. Maybe a lunch break is better for you, or before a class or something like that. But that's where you'll want to always have access to a book and see, like, kind of experiment with where you are able to read the most. I would recommend at least trying to make reading the last thing you do in your day. I know that some people, like, if you're someone who goes to work right away in the morning, that's not that reasonable for some people, but I think at nighttime more people might be able to do. So I think that makes a huge difference. So it is something to try out. The other thing that I like to do is actively time block my day and have reading as one of those time blocks. So since I have a lot of things that I want to accomplish and a lot of jobs, if you will, that I'm working on, I like to time block my day because I'm in charge of my schedule. So if that's something that you enjoy doing, I add reading as a specific time block on my schedule daily. And this is really helpful. I'll talk about this more in a video on my second channel where I'm talking about like organization tips, but this is really helpful when I have my Apple Watch because it will actually notify me when it's time to read. I have it set up so it will alert me 5 minutes before I move on to my next task, so I'll know now it's time to read. But if you don't like time blocking, which it doesn't work for some people, add reading to your to-do list. That has made a huge difference because I'm very motivated by checking things off on my to-do list. It's just something I love to do, and I find I'm more likely to fit in my reading even when I'm busy, when it's actually something that's written on my to-do list. So you can just have read, but I will sometimes put read 50 pages, read for an hour, or have that little goal there to add a little bit more of a challenge. This next tip kind of goes without saying, but whenever you have free time, try and pick up a book. Obviously, like, not every second that you're not doing something, you don't have to be reading, but if you are trying to read more, then try and instead of going on Instagram, when you catch yourself on Instagram, instead start a reading session. You'll be surprised how much more reading you can do when every time you're on social media, you instead go and read. A helpful way to implement that is to set time limits on your phone. So I'm not sure about other phones, but on my iPhone, I can set time limits for certain apps such as Instagram, and I can also set downtime. So I know when it's downtime, that's times when I'm not going to be scrolling on social media or things like that. I'm actually going to be reading, and that will be right before bed. But you can also set a time limit. So once you have been on, let's say, Instagram or Facebook for like 2 hours, then you will be blocked from it on your phone. And then I know, okay, I've spent way too much time on social media. Now I should use this free time more productively to read or do other things, but read is what we're talking about here. Another way that you can keep track of your reading sessions is using the Pomodoro method. So this is a studying thing where you will have 25 minutes of active working time followed by a 5-minute break. And this is something that I find really helps me to not burn out. So I know that if I'm having trouble focusing on a book, then for 25 minutes, I can focus on it and then take that 5-minute break. But usually once I stick to those 25 minutes, I will also want to continue past the break. If you really, really, really want to read more and you want to get that number up, you can also pick shorter and faster paced books. Don't pick all books that are like Game of Thrones or whatever that are going to take most people, maybe not you, but I know for me, that would take me centuries to read. Pick something that you know you can get through more quickly, or try and alternate between those big books and some shorter, more fast-paced reads, so then you can feel like you're keeping the pace up despite reading some bigger books. So it kind of, for me at least, it tricks my mind out of getting into a reading slump. That being said, if you do feel a reading slump coming on, it's okay to take a break. Take a break and then try again in a couple of days or however long you feel like you might need, and then come back to reading. reading. This also might seem counterproductive, but I find that DNFing or did not finish, so if you're not liking a book, you end up just putting it down, giving up on it, whether you have it in mind to continue with it again later, or I usually just give up on it entirely. Either way, DNFing has made a huge difference in my reading, because when I wasn't DNFing books that I wasn't liking, I felt like I had to finish everything, even if I wasn't liking it, and then I would find myself in reading slumps very often. So by giving myself the freedom to only read what I enjoy, it has made a massive difference. I know some people might not like this, but I do recommend at least trying it out and seeing if it will be something for you. I also love to have a game plan. So I find that when I'm currently reading something and I don't really have any idea of what I want to read next, generally it will take me a while to pick something up and pick something up that will actually capture my attention. So kind of having something in mind that you might want to pick up next for me can be very helpful. And the last tip that I have for you guys is one that, I don't know, it might not be a tip for you guys, but don't put too much pressure on yourself. For me, if anything puts pressure on me, I automatically don't want to do it. It completely turns me off from it. So keep reading fun. The fact that you want to read more is great. It's a step in the right direction, but don't feel like you have to do it because everyone else is reading a ton. If you're hoping to try and see if you can read a little bit more to challenge yourself or get to all the books that you want to get to because there are way too many and there's not enough time to read all of them, then that's totally fine, but don't feel like you have to do it. So those are all the tips that I wanted to share with you guys today. I hope they helped you out. If they did, please, so those are all the tips that I wanted to share with you guys today. I hope that they helped you out. Please share some of your top tips for how you can read more down below. I know there's also some methods of actually speed reading, but for me, I just wanted to talk about some really easy things that you can implement into your day-to-day life. Nothing like speed reading tactics like skipping reading in blocks, or you look at 4 words at a time, or you try and silence your inner voice. Those things I'm not going to be talking about today, but there are plenty of videos out there that can help you with that. I really wanted to focus on how you can meaningfully increase your reading time and also have your reading times be more meaningful. That being said, thank you very much once again to Basmo for sponsoring today's video. Don't forget to check them out in the link down below. I highly recommend it. It is such a great app that any reader would love. But thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one soon. Bye!